And you mentioned that Sanofi began this journey about 10 years ago. And I believe that today, if I have my numbers right, the company is reporting that development programs are 100% informed by patients. And I take that to mean that the patient insights are being somehow incorporated into the development programs across the company. Can you share a little bit of insight into perhaps how that patient feedback is gathered, who or what groups you're gathering it from? I know you mentioned some of those patient groups that are partners, but how is that patient feedback gathered? Who is it gathered from? And then basically, how do you go about incorporating it into those development programs throughout the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I just put up on the screen, hopefully people can see it. I mean, we are all in. It is 100% of our clinical development programs, 100% of our indications, 100% of our clinical trials. And of course, all of our studies, all of our programs have diversity goals set before we even have a clinical study drafted. So the impact you can see on the screen, and Terttu is certainly going to speak about how our remote and digital capabilities are very early thought about. But your question around how do we engage? So there's multiple ways. First and foremost, we directly engage with individuals from the patient communities and also from leadership and stakeholders from advocacy organizations and healthcare professionals who are also representing. Our engagement is global. Today, sitting here, we are working with patient stakeholders and advocacy organizations in 33 different countries. There's more than 130 patient advocacy organizations that are supporting us in our work and helping us reach through the community. And so we work through the advocacy group to connect with individuals within their ecosystem who are really what we consider our advisors and our key opinion leaders. We also run a lot of patient preference studies to explore patient preference, but also to confirm some of the assumptions that we hear, again, going back to translating insights. We draw upon clinical trial experience through early use of COAs as an example, clinical outcomes assessments that we'll hear, patient-generated health data, because individuals are speaking through digital technology. So, electronic health records, real-world evidence, we use social media listening as well. And then obviously literature. So there's a lot that's published from advocacy organizations as well as healthcare professionals. So we like to take a very holistic approach on how we obtain the information, but it does inform our outcomes strategy. We have leadership from advocacy organizations that are sitting with the teams actually today as we're looking forward around what is the evidence generation that we need across life cycle management that's meaningful for patients. And we're getting advice there, recruitment and retention materials. What's important to patients? What are the questions that they need answered so that they and their loved ones and other, caregivers can make an informed decision about the right option, and a clinical trial may be one of those. How do we reduce the burden? What are the concerns that people would have? And so it's pretty expansive in terms of the how, and then also where it is that we're applying it.
Okay, Miles, could we take a look at the results from that first poll question? And I was not able to see the question, and I'm guessing I'm not going to be able to see the results either. If you could share those with me real quick.
Yeah, Ed, we've got 71% saying yes and about 29% saying no.
Okay, perfect. Then let's go ahead and put up the second poll question. And this one really addresses that 29% who have not yet incorporated those technologies. I'm just curious as to when you expect that you might begin to do that. And you'll see a few choices there. I'm just asking you to, again, pick one of those to let us know whether it's going to happen fairly quickly or whether you think it still might be a few years off. And one question that just came in that I wanted to bounce off you, Thomas had asked how much of your patient-centric engagement efforts are actually changing your vendor strategy in any way? In other words, have you ever implemented a new solution upon a request that you got from a patient or a patient group? Is that something you have any insights into?
Yeah, I mean, so we do a lot, and I know that Terttu will probably, I don't know, Terttu, maybe if I can pivot this over to you because it does go right very much into the heart of our digital strategy. But we have, I mean, again, going back 10 years, I think the earliest example of how it helped us with our strategy is very much vividly recall sitting at a conference, a patient conference in San Diego. This is, I guess 8 years ago to be precise, when we were just starting to evaluate different vendors with ePros. And we actually convened a patient advisory meeting, and we actually walked through the utilization of it with individuals hands-on. And that really helped guide some of the insights, because at the time, if you think a lot of this remote stuff was relatively new, and we were one of the first companies long before the pandemic to begin working on what we called at the time the E-study. Serendipitously, we didn't realize at the time that it would allow us to continue all of our clinical trials when the pandemic first started, because we had that experience. But working with those advisors very early on to understand, could they see the information on the handheld device? How hard was it from a dexterity perspective? Because our pipeline, had various different indications. And if you think of rheumatology as an example, there were implications behind the ability to complete it. So we have been building upon that for quite some time. And I don't know, Terttu, if you want to augment some of that.